Mara Voss was 13 years old, and she was bored out of her mind. She sat on a metal crate in the corner of Junkyard Station Omega 14, swinging her legs back and forth while her father argued with a four-armed alien about the price of engine parts. The station smelled like burned oil and something sweet she could not name. Strange creatures walked past her without looking down. To them, she was nothing. Just a small human girl from a small human colony that most of the galaxy had never even heard of. Her father, Ren Voss, was a salvage hauler. He flew a beat-up cargo ship between frontier worlds, buying and selling scrap metal and old ship parts. It was not exciting work, but it kept food on the table. He had brought Mara along because the colony's school was closed for the week, and he did not trust her to stay home alone. Not after the last time, when she had tried to fix the water recycler by herself and flooded the entire kitchen. "Stay here," her father had told her. "Don't touch anything. Don't talk to anyone. Don't wander off." Mara had already broken all 3 rules. She had wandered through the station's lower levels, past rows of broken ships and piles of twisted metal, until she found herself standing at the back of a large auction hall. The ceiling was high and dark. Hundreds of aliens filled the room, all of them much bigger than her. A fat slug-like creature stood on a floating platform at the front, calling out lot numbers in a language that Mara's cheap translation earpiece barely understood. Most of the ships being sold were junk, old freighters with cracked hulls, mining vessels with dead engines. Nobody seemed very excited. Mara was about to leave when the slug auctioneer called out the last lot of the day. Lot 774, unidentified vessel, non-functional, scrap classification. Located in Quarantine Bay 9. Starting bid, 100 galactic credits. A picture appeared on the big screen behind the auctioneer. Mara stopped walking. The ship was black. Not painted black, but black like deep space, like it swallowed light. It was shaped like nothing she had ever seen before. Smooth and curved, like a sleeping animal. Scars and burn marks covered its hull, and one of its wings was bent at a bad angle. But even broken and beaten, it was the most beautiful thing Mara had ever seen. Nobody bid. The auctioneer waited. He made a wet, annoyed sound. 50 credits then. Anyone? The metal alone is worth more than 50 credits. Still nothing. Mara noticed something strange. The aliens near the front of the room were leaning away from the screen, as if the picture itself made them uncomfortable. A tall, thin creature with silver skin whispered to its companion, "That ship is cursed. Everyone who has tried to board it has come back sick." 20 credits, the auctioneer said, sounding desperate. "I'm practically giving it away." Mara's hand went to her pocket. She had 142 credits saved up. Birthday money from her father, plus what she had earned helping old Mr. Chen fix his greenhouse. She had been saving for a new pair of boots. But boots were just boots. That ship was something else entirely. 20 credits, Mara shouted. Her voice was thin and high in the huge room. Every head turned toward her. Hundreds of alien eyes looked down at a small human girl with messy brown hair and a patched jacket 2 sizes too big for her. The silence was so heavy, Mara could hear her own heartbeat. Then the auctioneer laughed. It was a horrible, wet, bubbling laugh. "A human child. How wonderful. Do I hear 25? Nothing. Nobody wanted the ship." "Sold," the auctioneer bellowed, still laughing. "To the tiny human. Congratulations, little creature. You now own a pile of cursed scrap metal." Several aliens laughed. Mara's face burned red, but she lifted her chin and walked forward to press her thumb on the payment pad. 20 credits vanished from her account. The auctioneer handed her a small data chip, still chuckling. "Quarantine Bay 9. Enjoy your ghost ship." Mara found Bay 9 at the very bottom of the station. It was cold and dark, separated from the rest of the station by thick blast doors. Warning signs in a dozen languages covered the walls. She ignored them all and walked inside. And there it was. The ship was even bigger than she had expected. It sat in the middle of the bay like a fallen giant, silent and dark. Up close, the black hull seemed to shift and move, like oil on water. Mara felt something strange in her chest, a pull, like the ship was calling to her. She reached out and pressed her palm flat against the hull. The metal was warm. Then the world changed. A wave of blue light exploded from the point where her hand touched the ship. It raced across the entire hull in a heartbeat, lighting up patterns and symbols that glowed like veins of fire. The bay's overhead lights flickered and popped. The station's power grid groaned. Somewhere above, alarms started screaming. Mara could not move. Her hand was stuck to the hull, and something was flooding into her mind. Images, sounds, stars being born, worlds burning. A voice, deep and old and tired, rising from somewhere inside the ship, like a creature waking from a long sleep. Finally, the voice said. It spoke directly into her thoughts. I have waited so long. Then the light faded. Mara pulled her hand free and stumbled backward, breathing hard. Faint lights glowed along its hull, blinking slowly, like a heartbeat. She heard running footsteps behind her. Her father burst through the blast doors, his face white with fear. Mara, what did you do? The whole station just lost power for 3 seconds. What? He stopped. He stared at the ship, at the lights, at his daughter standing in front of something that should not be alive. I bought a ship, Mara said quietly. Far across the galaxy, in a room with no windows, a reptilian creature named Torvax Alshen sat in a chair made of bone. A message appeared on his screen. He read it slowly, and then he smiled with all 3 rows of his teeth. The human took the bait, he said to the darkness. Inform the Grand Archon. Phase 1 is complete. He leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. Everything was going according to plan. A 13-year-old girl had just bought the most dangerous ship in the galaxy, and she had no idea what was coming. But then again, neither did Torvax. It took Mara's father 3 days to tow the ship back to New Tyrion. New Tyrion was not much of a colony. It was a dusty world with orange skies and thin air, sitting at the far edge of human space. About 2,000 people lived there in a cluster of metal buildings, surrounded by greenhouses and water recyclers. It was the kind of place the galaxy forgot about, which was exactly why Ren Voss had chosen it after his wife died. He parked the black ship at the edge of the colony's scrapyard, behind a wall of old cargo containers where nobody would notice it. Then he sat Mara down at the kitchen table and told her she was never to go near it again. Mara waited exactly 1 night before sneaking out. She climbed through a gap in the cargo containers and crossed the dusty ground to the ship. It sat there like a sleeping beast, dark against the orange sky. The faint lights along its hull pulsed slowly, like breathing. Mara pressed her hand to the hull, and a door opened. Not with a mechanical sound, but with a soft exhale, like the ship was sighing. Inside, the air was cool and clean. The walls curved around her like the inside of a shell. Faint blue light came from everywhere and nowhere. Mara walked forward, her boots making no sound on the smooth floor. "Hello?" she said. The voice came again, filling her mind like warm water. "Hello, pilot. My name is Mara." A long pause. "Hello, Mara. I am Kale. I am this vessel." Over the next week, Mara returned to the ship every night. Each time, Kale was a little more awake. His voice grew clearer. Systems came online one by one. Lights, air filters, navigation screens that showed maps of stars Mara had never heard of. Kale spoke in broken sentences at first, like a person learning to talk again after a long illness. But piece by piece, he told her the truth. It was 10,000 years old, and it was the last surviving flagship of a species called the Agari. The Agari were the peacekeepers of the galaxy, Kale explained. His voice was deep and sad, like wind passing through an empty canyon. They were wise. They were kind. They built ships like me, living vessels, bonded to their pilots through a connection called resonance. For 3,000 years they kept the peace between all species. What happened to them? Mara asked. She was sitting cross-legged in what seemed to be the cockpit, eating a protein bar she had stolen from the kitchen. Kale did not answer for a long time. Then the walls around her lit up with images. She saw tall, graceful beings with silver skin and dark eyes. She saw them building cities that floated among the clouds. She saw them healing wounded planets. And then she saw fire. The other species grew jealous, Kale said. The Agari were too powerful, too respected. A coalition of species formed in secret. They attacked without warning. The war lasted 11 days. When it was over, the Agari were gone, every last one. Mara felt tears on her cheeks. All of them? All of them. The coalition erased their history, burned their worlds, destroyed every ship they could find. They told the galaxy that the Agari never existed. And then they built the Hegemony Council on the ashes. Mara wiped her eyes with her sleeve. But you survived. I was damaged, drifting. They thought I was dead. I let them think it. I shut down everything and floated through the dark for 10,000 years, waiting. Waiting for what? For a resonant. The Agari were all resonants. Their minds could bond with ships like me. When they died, I thought the gift died with them. But evolution is strange, Mara. Life finds its own paths. Your species, humans, you are young. You are loud and messy, and you break everything you touch. Thanks, Mara said flatly. But you carry the gift. Resonance lives in your neurons, in your blood, in the way your emotions burn so brightly. No Agari ever felt things as strongly as humans do. When you touched my hull, I felt more from you in 1 second than I felt from my old captain in 100 years. Mara stared at the glowing walls. So I'm special? All humans are special. You just happened to be the first one to touch me. On the 8th night, Mara found she was not alone on the ship. She heard a crash in the cargo bay, and ran to find a skinny, cat-like alien tangled in a pile of cables. He had big yellow eyes, pointed ears, and fur the color of rust. He was trying to pry a panel off the wall with a bent piece of metal. "Hey!" Mara shouted. The alien hissed and tried to run, but tripped over the cables and fell on his face. Mara stood over him with her arms crossed. "Who are you?" "Nobody," he said. His voice was high and scratchy. "I am nobody, and I was never here, and if you could just let me go, I will be very grateful, and also I might not bite you." His name was Dex. He was 16, a Fulani from a destroyed colony, and he had been living in the Obsidian Throne's cargo bay for 3 days, ever since he stowed away at Station Omega 14. He was trying to steal parts to sell for food money. Mara should have been angry. Instead, she went back to the colony and returned with 2 protein bars and a bottle of water. She tossed them to Dex, who caught them with a look of pure confusion on his furry face. "Why?" he asked. "Because you're hungry," Mara said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Dex ate both bars in seconds, and then stared at her like she was the strangest creature he had ever met. He did not exactly stay either. He just happened to always be there when Mara came back. It was Kale who broke the peace. On the 10th night, his voice turned sharp and urgent. "Mara, ships have entered your system. Military vessels, hegemony markings. Mara ran to the cockpit. The navigation screens showed 4 large warships in orbit above Neuterion. A cold, official voice was broadcasting on all channels. Attention, human colony. This is Hegemony Patrol Fleet 7. We are conducting a mandatory quarantine inspection. All residents will remain in their homes. Any resistance will be met with force. Mara's heart hammered. Kale, what do they want? She asked. Me, Kale said. They have felt me waking. They are afraid. What do we do? I do not know. I am not fully repaired. I cannot fly. I cannot fight. Mara looked at the screens. The warships were moving closer. She thought about her father. About the 2,000 people in the colony who had never done anything wrong. About her mother, who had died in a pirate raid because no one had been there to protect their world. Something hot and fierce rose in her chest. It was not courage exactly. It was anger. It was the feeling of a girl who had lost too much already and refused to lose anything more. Kale, she said, can you do shields? A pause. I can try. Mara closed her eyes and reached out with her mind, the way she had learned over the past week. She felt Kale's systems like a second heartbeat. She found the shield generators, cold and stiff from 10,000 years of sleep. She pushed everything she had into them. All her fear, all her anger, all her love for her father and her colony and her dusty little world. The obsidian throne lit up like a star. A dome of blue energy erupted from the ship and expanded outward in every direction. It passed over the scrapyard, over the colony, over the greenhouses and the water recyclers, until it covered everything, every building, every person, the entire colony, wrapped in a shield of ancient light. The hegemony ships fired. Their weapons hit the shield and vanished like rain hitting stone. They fired again. Nothing. The shield did not even flicker. In orbit, the fleet commander stared at his screens in disbelief. Then he opened a channel to the most powerful being in the galaxy. Grand Archon Sarathi, he said. The throne is awake. On the other end, a voice older than most civilizations answered calmly. Good. Proceed to Phase 2. Blame the humans. Inside the ship, Mara opened her eyes. Her nose was bleeding. Her hands were shaking, but the shield held. Dex stood behind her, his yellow eyes wide as moons. What are you? He whispered. Mara wiped the blood from her nose and looked up at the stars through the cockpit window. I have no idea, she said. The galaxy turned against humanity in 3 days. It started with a broadcast from the Hegemony Council. Grand Archon Sarathi appeared on every screen in every system across civilized space. He was an ancient creature, tall and thin, with skin like cracked stone and eyes that glowed a dull red. His species, the Vorath, had lived for hundreds of thousands of years, and Sarathi himself was older than most planets. When he spoke, the galaxy listened. Fellow citizens of the hegemony, he said, his voice smooth and heavy like liquid metal. It is my solemn duty to inform you that the human species, a Class 7 primitive civilization from the Outer Rim, has obtained a weapon of mass destruction, an ancient warship of unknown origin, capable of planetary devastation. They have activated this weapon and used it to attack a peaceful hegemony patrol fleet. The footage he showed was real, but the story was a lie. The hegemony ships had fired first. The shield had only defended, but Sarathi had cut the footage carefully. All the galaxy saw was a tiny human colony suddenly wrapped in a terrifying dome of energy, and 4 hegemony ships being pushed back. We offered them the chance to surrender this weapon peacefully, Sarathi continued. They refused. We have no choice but to treat this as an act of war. On Earth, in the small office that served as humanity's galactic embassy, a junior diplomat named Sandra Chen watched the broadcast with her mouth open. Humanity had only been part of galactic society for 12 years. They had no fleet, no allies, no political power. They were still learning the rules of a game that other species had played for millions of years. And now, the most powerful government in the galaxy had just called them a threat. On New Tyrion, Mara sat inside the obsidian throne and felt the weight of what was happening pressing down on her like a mountain. Kale showed her the news feeds from across the galaxy. Species she had never heard of were calling for humanity to be destroyed. Trade routes to human colonies were being shut down. Human workers on alien stations were being detained. "This is my fault," Mara whispered. "No," Kale said firmly. "This was planned long before you were born." It was then that the second voice came through the ship's communication system. It was not Kale. It was a channel that had been hidden deep inside the ship's systems, encrypted in a language that was 10,000 years old. When Kale decoded it, a face appeared on the cockpit screen. She was an insectoid alien with large, multifaceted eyes that shifted colors like oil. She had 4 delicate arms, and wings folded behind her back, like glass. Her name was Ambassador Yulan, and she was a member of the Vithari species, one of the oldest in the galaxy. "Mara Voss," Yulan said. Her voice was soft and clicking, like rain on leaves. "I do not have much time. They are monitoring all channels. Listen carefully." Yulan told Mara the truth. The auction had been arranged. The ship had been placed on Station Omega 14 on purpose. A reptilian arms dealer named Torvax Olshen had made sure the auction was held when Mara's father would be at the station. He had made sure all the other bidders were scared away. He had made sure a human would find the ship. "But why?" Mara asked, her voice cracking. "Because the hegemony has feared humanity since the day your species was discovered," Yulan said. "You breed fast, you adapt faster, and now they know you carry resonance, the gift of the Agari. Serethi could not simply attack you. Galactic law protects primitive species. He needed a reason. So he gave you a weapon, and then told the galaxy you stole it." Mara felt sick. She was a puppet in a game she did not even know was being played. "Why are you telling me this?" Mara asked. "Why are you helping me?" Yulan's colorful eyes dimmed for a moment. "Because my species remembers the Agari. We were their friends. We watched them die and did nothing. I will not make that mistake again." After Yulan's transmission ended, Mara sat in silence for a long time. Dex sat beside her, his tail wrapped around his knees, saying nothing. He had heard everything. Finally, Kale spoke. "They wanted you to find me, Mara. That part was true. But they did not expect you to wake me. They thought a human child would buy a dead ship and it would stay dead, and they would use it as evidence of human aggression. But you are a resonant. The bond between us is real. They cannot fake that. They cannot control it." Mara looked at her hands. Small hands. Hands that had fixed greenhouse panels, and braided her own hair and held her father's hand at her mother's funeral. "What can I do?" she asked. "I'm 13. I'm nobody." "You are my captain," Kale said, and there was something in his voice that had not been there before. "Pride. And I am the Obsidian Throne. What do you want to do?" Mara thought about it. She thought about Serethi's lies spreading across the galaxy. She thought about human workers being dragged out of their homes on alien stations. She thought about her colony, 2,000 people hiding behind a shield that she could not hold forever. "I want to tell the truth," she said. "I want to go to the Concord Spire and stand in front of the council and tell them what really happened." Dex made a strangled noise. "The Concord Spire? The seat of the hegemony? Mara, that is the most heavily guarded place in the galaxy. We will die before we get within 100 light-years of it." "Maybe," Mara said. "But if we stay here, they will come for us anyway. At least this way, we get to choose." She went to tell her father. That conversation was the hardest thing she had ever done. Harder than touching the ship, harder than holding the shield. Ren Voss stood in their small kitchen with tears running down his weathered face and begged his daughter not to go. "Your mother would never forgive me," he said. Mara hugged him tight. "Mom died because nobody came to help us," she said into his chest. "Nobody stood up. I'm not going to let that happen to our whole planet. I can't, Dad." He held her for a long time. Then he let her go. Kale had repaired enough systems to fly, though he warned that he was running at maybe 30% power. It would have to be enough. Mara sat in the captain's chair, which adjusted itself to fit her small body. Dex strapped in beside her, muttering prayers in his own language. The obsidian throne rose from the scrapyard of New Tyrian like a dark angel. The shield around the colony flickered and died as the ship's power redirected to engines. Below, 2,000 humans looked up and watched the black ship climb into the orange sky and disappear. They were 3 days from the Concord Spire when Torvax found them. His mercenary fleet dropped out of hyperspace like wolves. 12 ships, fast and heavily armed, surrounding the obsidian throne in a net of weapons. "Human child," Torvax's voice came through the communications. He sounded amused. "Where do you think you are going?" Mara's hands were shaking on the controls. "Kale?" "I am here, Captain. The ship responds to you. Do not think. Feel." Mara closed her eyes. She felt the ship around her like a second skin. She felt its weapons, its engines, its ancient heart, beating in time with hers. And then, she moved. The obsidian throne did not fight like a warship. It fought like a wild animal. It spun and twisted and dove through gaps that should not have existed. Mara was not a trained pilot. She did not know tactics or formations. She flew on instinct, on fear, on the desperate need to survive, and the ship loved it. It adapted to her every impulse, every flinch, every surge of adrenaline. 3 of Torvax's ships collided with each other trying to follow her. 2 more were disabled by weapons that bent space itself. The rest scattered. When it was over, Mara was gasping, her knuckles white on the controls. Dex was pressed flat against his seat, his fur standing on end. Torvax's damaged flagship limped away into hyperspace. Before he left, he sent one last message to Grand Archon Serethi. "The girl is not just a resonant. The ship is changing. It is adapting to her. It is becoming something new." She was too busy flying toward the most dangerous place in the galaxy, with a broken ship, a stowaway cat alien, and a truth that could shake the stars. She arrived at the Concord Spire on a Tuesday. One small, ancient warship floating in front of an armada of thousands. Mara opened every communication channel she could find and broadcast her voice to the entire galaxy. "My name is Mara Voss. I am 13 years old. I am human, and I am here to tell you the truth." The Concord Spire was the largest structure Mara had ever seen. It hung in space like a frozen explosion of crystal and metal, its towers reaching in every direction, glowing with the light of 1,000 species. Ships of every shape and size orbited it like fish around a coral reef. At its center was the Grand Chamber, where the Hegemony Council made the laws that governed 100,000 worlds. Mara had expected them to shoot her down. They did not. That was the first surprise. "They want an audience," Kale explained, as a squadron of escort ships guided the obsidian throne toward a docking port. "Serethi is not afraid of you. He wants the galaxy to watch him crush a human child in front of the council. It will make his case stronger." "Great," Mara said. Her stomach was doing flips. "So I'm walking into a trap." "Yes." "Any advice?" "It is the only weapon they do not know how to fight." Dex grabbed her arm before she left the ship. His yellow eyes were wide and scared. "I should come with you." "No," Mara said. "Stay with Kale. If something goes wrong, you might need to fly." "I cannot fly this ship. I am not a resonant." "Then crash it into something important." She gave him a shaky smile. I'll be back. The walk from the docking port to the grand chamber took 20 minutes. Mara was escorted by 4 hegemony guards, each one 3 times her size. They walked through halls of polished stone and living light. Alien diplomats stopped and stared as she passed. Some whispered, some laughed. A few looked at her with something that might have been pity. The grand chamber was shaped like an enormous bowl, with thousands of seats rising in circles around a central platform. Representatives from 600 species looked down at the small figure that walked to the center of the platform and stood there, alone. Mara had never felt so small in her entire life. Grand Archon Sarathi sat at the highest point of the chamber, on a throne carved from the bones of some ancient creature. He looked down at Mara with his glowing red eyes, and his thin mouth curved into something that was almost a smile. "The Council recognizes the human, Mara Voss," he said. His voice echoed through the vast chamber without effort. "You have come to answer for your species' crimes." "I have come to tell the truth," Mara said. Her voice cracked on the last word, and she heard laughter from somewhere in the upper seats. Sarathi raised one long bony hand. "Let us review the facts." Behind him, a massive screen lit up with images. The obsidian throne sitting on New Tyrian, the shield dome activating, the hegemony patrol ships being pushed back. A human colony has activated an ancient weapon of mass destruction. They have used it against a peaceful hegemony patrol. They have refused all requests to surrender. And now their representative, a child, has flown this weapon to our very doorstep. He paused for effect. The chamber was silent. "The evidence is clear. Humanity is a threat. I move for an immediate vote to classify them as a hostile species, with all the consequences that follow." Mara knew what those consequences meant. Military occupation of every human world, seizure of all human ships, forced relocation, the end of humanity as a free species. "Can I speak?" Mara asked. Sarathi waved his hand. "By all means, speak." Mara looked up at the thousands of faces staring down at her. She had not prepared a speech. She did not have notes, or data, or fancy words. She was a 13-year-old girl from a dusty colony, standing in the center of galactic power, and she was terrified. So she just told them what happened. "I went to a junk auction with my dad," she said. "He's a salvage hauler. He buys scrap. I saw a ship that nobody wanted because it scared them. I bought it with my birthday money. 20 credits. That's less than a pair of boots." A few aliens shifted in their seats. This was not what they expected. "When I touched the ship, it woke up. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what resonance was. I didn't know about the Agari, or the hegemony, or any of this. I'm 13. I go to school. I help my neighbor fix his greenhouse. My favorite food is my dad's grilled cheese sandwiches." More shifting. Sarathi's smile faded slightly. "Then your ships came. They pointed guns at my home, at 2,000 people who have never hurt anyone. I was scared, so I put up a shield. I didn't attack anybody. I just wanted to protect my people." Mara felt tears building behind her eyes, but she forced them back. "I know you think humans are primitive. I know you think we're nothing. But we're not stupid. I know when I'm being used." She looked directly at Sarathi. "Somebody wanted me to find that ship. Somebody made sure I would buy it. And then somebody told the whole galaxy that we stole it." Sarathi's red eyes narrowed. "A child's fantasy. You have no proof." "Yes, I do." Mara touched the small communication device behind her ear. "Kale," she whispered. "Show them." There was a heartbeat of silence. Then the grand chamber's walls came alive. Every screen, every display, every surface that could hold an image, suddenly blazed with light. The obsidian throne, still docked outside, was broadcasting directly into the chamber, through channels so old and so deep that no hegemony firewall could block them. The Agari appeared. 10,000 years of history poured into the chamber like a river. The council saw the Agari building their civilization. They saw them creating the living ships. They saw them traveling between stars, healing conflicts, protecting the weak. Beautiful, silver-skinned beings who had wanted nothing but peace. And then they saw the betrayal. The secret meetings between jealous species, the plans drawn up in dark rooms, the first strike without warning against Agari homeworlds, cities burning, ships dying in the void, children screaming, an entire civilization wiped out in 11 days. And at the center of it all, leading the coalition, were the ancestors of the species who now sat on the Hegemony Council. Serethi's ancestors, giving the order to kill every last Agari. The final recording was from the Obsidian Throne's own captain. A tall Agari woman with silver hair and dark, gentle eyes. She was wounded. The ship was burning around her. She looked into the recording device and spoke her last words. If anyone finds this ship, know that we did not start this war. We only wanted peace. Please, whoever you are, be better than those who destroyed us. The recording ended. The chamber was dead silent. Mara stood on the platform, with tears running down her face. She did not wipe them away. Then the chaos began. Species that had never known the truth were on their feet, shouting. Delegates who had supported Serethi for centuries were staring at him with horror in their eyes. Ambassador Yulan stood from her seat in the Vithari section and spoke in a voice that carried like a bell. I can confirm the authenticity of this data. The Vithari archives contain partial records that match these recordings. This is not fabricated. This is our true history. Serethi rose from his bone throne. His stone skin was cracking. His red eyes blazed. Lies, he roared, all of it, fabricated by human technology to deceive this council. But nobody believed him anymore. The truth was too big, too detailed, too painful to be a lie. For a moment, Mara thought it was over. She thought the truth had won. Then Serethi did something she did not expect. He stopped pretending. He raised his hand and pressed a device on his wrist. A signal went out, and across the star system, hidden in the darkness between planets, 400 warships dropped out of hyperspace. If this council will not act, Serethi said, his voice now cold and hard, then I will act alone. Destroy the throne, destroy the girl, destroy anyone who stands in the way. Alarms screamed throughout the Concord spire. Delegates ran for the exits. Guards moved to protect the chamber. And Mara ran. She ran through the halls, past panicking aliens, through corridors that shook with the sound of weapons firing outside. She reached the docking port and threw herself through the Obsidian Throne's door. Dex was already in his seat, wide-eyed and trembling. They are coming, Kale said. His voice was calm, the way a soldier's voice is calm before a battle. 400 warships, plus the fleet already stationed here. The total count is approximately 4,000. Mara strapped herself into the captain's chair. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely grip the controls. 4,000 against one? She said. Yes, Captain. Mara closed her eyes. She thought about the Agari captain's last words. Be better. Then let's make it count, she said. The Obsidian Throne detached from the Concord spire and flew into the fire. The sky around the Concord spire was on fire. 4,000 warships filled the void in every direction, their weapons hot and ready, their hulls painted with the red markings of the Grand Archon's personal fleet. Against them, one ship, black as night, scarred and ancient, carrying a 13-year-old girl, a stowaway cat alien, and the ghost of a dead civilization. Mara did not think about the odds. If she thought about them, she would stop, and if she stopped, she would die. So she flew. The Obsidian Throne came alive in ways it had not done in 10,000 years. Kale poured everything he had into the ship's systems. Weapons that warped the fabric of space, fired in bursts of blinding light. Shields absorbed energy blasts and threw them back like mirrors. The ship moved through the battlefield like a needle through cloth, slipping between formations, spinning away from killing shots, striking and vanishing before the enemy could react. Dex handled the secondary systems. He was not trained for this, but his street survival instincts translated surprisingly well to space combat. He rerouted power, sealed damaged sections, and shouted warnings about incoming missiles with the speed of someone who had spent his whole life watching for danger. 2 on the left, Dex screamed. No, 3, 4. Mara, there are 4 of them. Mara pulled the ship into a dive that should have been impossible. 2 enemy frigates collided behind her. A third lost its engines to a burst from the throne's main guns. But the 4th clipped her wing, and the ship shuddered hard. Alarms filled the cockpit. Hull breach in Section 7, Kale reported. Shield generators at 40%. Captain, we cannot sustain this. She could feel the strain in her own body. The resonant bond meant that the ship's pain was her pain. Blood was trickling from her nose again. Her head felt like it was splitting open. Every hit the ship took felt like a punch to her chest. But she kept flying. For 30 minutes, the Obsidian Throne fought alone against 4,000 ships. It destroyed or disabled over 100 of them. It was the most extraordinary display of combat the galaxy had ever seen. Not because of superior technology, but because of the girl in the captain's chair. She did not fight with logic. She fought with emotion. She was terrified, and the ship turned that fear into speed. She was angry, and the ship turned that anger into fire. She loved her father, her colony, her strange little crew, and the ship turned that love into a shield that refused to break. But it was not enough. Even legends can bleed. A coordinated strike from 12 destroyers hit the Obsidian Throne from all sides at once. The shields collapsed. The ship tumbled through space, trailing smoke and sparks. Mara screamed as the bond sent a wave of agony through her body. Dex was thrown from his seat. Kale's voice flickered and faded. Captain, systems failing. I am sorry. Mara lay against the controls, barely conscious. Through the cracked cockpit window, she could see Sarathi's personal dreadnought moving toward them. It was enormous, a mountain of metal with a weapon at its front that glowed like a dying sun. One shot from that weapon would end everything. This is how it ends, Mara thought, just like the Agari. And then the first ship arrived. It was a cargo hauler, old and rusted, with dented plating and a paint job that had seen better days. It dropped out of hyperspace directly between the Obsidian Throne and Sarathi's dreadnought, and just sat there, blocking the line of fire. Then another ship arrived, a passenger liner, full of civilian travelers. It parked itself beside the cargo hauler. Then another, a mining vessel from an asteroid belt 3 systems away. Then 10 more, then 50, then hundreds. They came from everywhere, from every corner of the galaxy. Cargo ships, and passenger ferries, and colony transports, and science vessels, and personal shuttles, and old, wheezing freighters held together with tape and hope. They were crewed by Vithari and Filani and Grelthi and a dozen other species that Mara had never met. They were merchants and miners, and teachers and cooks and engineers and retired soldiers. Ordinary people who had seen Mara's broadcast in the Grand Chamber. Ordinary people who had learned the truth about the Agari. Ordinary people who had watched a 13-year-old girl stand alone against the most powerful creature in the galaxy and tell the truth. They were not fighters. They had no weapons. But they placed themselves between Sarathi's fleet and the broken ship of a human child, and they refused to move. A message went out on every channel, broadcast by thousands of voices at once. We are watching. The galaxy is watching. You will not bury the truth again. Sarathi's voice cut through the noise like a blade. "Move aside, all of you. This is a military operation. Any civilian vessel that does not clear the area will be treated as hostile." Nobody moved. "Fire," Sarathi ordered his fleet. Some captains obeyed. Their weapons struck the civilian ships, and explosions bloomed in the darkness. Mara watched in horror as a passenger liner broke apart, its escape pods scattering like seeds in the wind. But most of Sarathi's captains did not fire. They sat in their command chairs and looked at the screens showing civilian ships being destroyed. And they refused. One by one, warship captains switched off their weapons. Some turned their ships around. A few even moved to shield the civilian fleet. Sarathi's coalition, built on lies and fear, crumbled in real time. Inside the obsidian throne, Mara watched it all through tears. She felt something stirring inside her. Something deeper than the resonant bond, deeper than fear or anger or pain. It was the feeling of not being alone, of an entire galaxy standing up, not because they were brave, but because they had finally seen the truth and could not look away. She reached out to Kale. His voice was barely a whisper now, his systems failing, his ancient mind fading. "Kale," she said, "I need you one more time." "I am here, Captain. I am always here." Mara closed her eyes and reached deeper into the bond than she had ever gone before. She went past Kale's systems, past his memory banks, past his damaged hull. She reached into the place where the Agari had left their mark on the ship's very soul, and she found them. 10,000 years of ghosts. Every captain who had ever sat in this chair. Every pilot who had ever flown this ship. Every Agari who had ever lived and loved and fought and died. They were not gone. They were part of the ship, woven into its structure like light into crystal. And now they turned toward Mara, and she felt their warmth, their grief, their hope. "Help me," she whispered to them. "Please." They answered. The obsidian throne transformed. Its broken hull sealed itself. Its bent wings straightened. Systems that had been locked for 10,000 years, hidden behind seals that only a true resonant could open, came alive. The ship grew brighter and brighter, until it blazed like a second sun in the darkness. But it was not a weapon that activated. It was something else. A pulse of energy exploded outward from the obsidian throne. It was not destructive. It passed through ships and stations and people without causing harm. But every weapon it touched went silent. Every gun, every missile, every energy cannon in the entire battlefield simply stopped working. The pulse expanded outward, covering the whole system, and then it was gone. Silence fell across the battlefield. Total, absolute silence. No one could fire. No one could fight. The battle was over. Mara slumped in her chair, barely breathing. The resonant bond had taken everything she had. Dex caught her before she fell, and held her up, his thin arms shaking. "Mara, Mara, stay awake. Come on, stay awake." On the bridge of his dreadnought, Sarathi stared at his dead weapon controls. He pressed every button. Nothing worked. He screamed orders at his officers, but there was nothing to be done. His own guards removed him from his throne. They did it quietly, without ceremony. The Grand Archon, the most powerful being in the galaxy, was led away in silence, while his empire collapsed around him. In the days that followed, everything changed. The Hegemony Council was dissolved. Ambassador Yulan led the formation of a new government, one built on transparency and truth. Torvax Olshen was arrested trying to flee to the Outer Rim. The story of the Agari was taught in schools across the galaxy for the first time in 10,000 years. Mara was offered everything: titles, power, command of fleets, a seat on the new council. She turned it all down. "I just want to go home," she said. The obsidian throne carried her back to New Tyrian on a quiet Tuesday morning. Her father was waiting at the edge of the scrapyard. He just held her, and she held him, and for a long time that was enough. Dex stayed. He had nowhere else to go, and Mara did not ask him to leave. He slept in the ship's cargo bay, and complained about the food, and called her captain, even though she told him to stop. He never did. Across the galaxy, the new era had a name. They did not call it the Age of the Throne, or the Fall of the Hegemony, or the Rise of the Council. They called it the Human Dawn, because it had started with a species so young and so small that nobody had taken them seriously. Nobody made that mistake again. On a warm evening, 3 weeks after the battle, Mara climbed onto the hull of the obsidian throne and sat there with her legs dangling over the edge. The orange sky of New Tyrian stretched above her, fading into purple at the edges where the stars were beginning to show. Kale's voice was quiet in her mind, healed now, gentle. "What now, Captain?" Mara looked up at the stars. She thought about the Agari captain's last words. Be better. She thought about the ghosts who had given her their strength. She thought about the civilian ships that had filled the sky because ordinary people had chosen to be brave. She thought about Dex snoring in the cargo bay, and her father making grilled cheese in the kitchen, and the 2,000 people of her dusty little colony who had watched her fly away and hoped she would come back. She smiled. "I don't know," she said, "but I think we should find out." Above her, the stars burned bright and endless, and somewhere among them, the galaxy was waking up to a brand new day.